We are about to get started. So welcome everyone to this celebration of CO Moeds. It was her New York. With Paula Grant, our archivist from the London University Archive. So my name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder, along with my partner, Donnie Jokum, of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division. And that is the space you are in right now. Yeah. So for those of you who are not familiar with us, the Bureau is an all-volunteer queer bookstore, independent, that has been in existence since 2012 and has been here at the center since 2014. Today, our volunteer is Tannen Reckling, who's helping us out. Thank you. And volunteers, sales, and donations keep this boat afloat. So we do have a suggested donation of $10, but we always say, give what you can if you can. And if you'd rather support us by buying books, for example, CO's book, that would be great. We much appreciate that. So whichever way you're able to help us, or just by smiling and being a kind person, that is great. So we do have change in the bag. I'll pass that around. You can also give on Venmo, those of you online, at VGSQD. Thank you. If you're not already on our email list and you would like to be, you can sign up for that in the back of the room on top of the used bookshelf, or you can go to our website, bgsqd.com. Those 5 easy to remember letters are all around. The short explanation for our very lengthy name is that we are a government agency for a government that does not yet exist. That is sorely needed. So before I introduce CO, I want to read a land acknowledgement and a call for a ceasefire. So the Bureau acknowledges that our organization operates on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape. We encourage you to join the Bureau in signing up to make a monthly donation to the American Indian Community Houses Mannahatta Fund. The Mannahatta Fund, according to its website, is an invitation to all settlers and non-native people who wish to acknowledge the legacy of theft and genocide that comprise the history of New York City and the United States. And you can find out more at mannahattafund.org. We also want to recognize that today, March 3rd, is the 148th day of Israel's genocidal campaign against the Palestinian people, funded by our tax dollars and enabled by our government's unwavering support. We hope that you will join us in calling for an immediate permanent ceasefire, an end to the siege, and an end to the occupation in order to stop the collective punishment of Palestinians and to ensure the swift delivery of much needed food, water, medicine, fuel, and medical aid to the people of Gaza. Thank you. Thank you. So, CO Moed is a lovely person, first of all. Let me just say a little note. CO has been so lovely through this whole process and has made a generous donation, and they're seating on the CO Moed memorial chairs. She donated these chairs to us.
Well, because Paula and I knew that we needed back.
It was a self-interested donation, but nonetheless a donation. So thank you. CO Moed grew up on New York's Lower East Side when it was still a tough neighborhood. An alum of the infamous Wow Cafe, her 10-year blog, 2006 to 2016, My Private Coney, about New York City, love, death, and the meaning of home, has been featured in Jeremiah Moss's Vanishing New York. Jeremiah. She lives with fellow writer and fellow Mets fan, Ted Craver. Paula Grant is a lesbian herstory archivist and elder, a social worker, activist, and great dancer. She's been one of the coordinators at the Lesbian Herstory Archives since 1979. Born in 1945 in Manhattan and raised in the Bronx, she is a longtime activist for human and civil rights. She retired in 2010 after 40 years as a social worker at a public agency in suburban New York State. She was a Dodgers fan until they deserted New York. Please welcome them both.
I thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for coming out on this beautiful afternoon. We're a bit dazzled and taken aback. But before we begin, I just want to give gratitude. Every 11 minutes around the world, every day, a woman or a girl is being killed by a male relative. Every day, 11 minutes. And so today, I give great gratitude that not only so many of us here survived those millions of 11 minutes, but we're here to celebrate a woman who also survived millions of those 11 minutes. We get to survive a woman who got to grow old. And not only did she get to grow old, she danced her way into the arms of all the women she had dreamt of her entire life. Welcome to her New York. My husband's a former operational manager at CBS.
Oh, whoops, that is not
ABC.
what I wanted.
Yeah. Potato, potato.
Let's try that again. There
We're
we go.
doing this new tech thing where we're actually going to have visual aids. I'm so excited. But considering that the book is just one big visual aid.
All right. Go there and go here.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah. There we go. All right, we're functioning.
We're functioning. Okay, I'm going to move this up. Settle in. It's story time, people. It was her New York. So Florence, the concert pianist who accidentally gave birth to me, is refusing to do much but lie in bed. I say, fine. You don't want to get out of bed? Then go lay down and die. She yells, lie down, not lay down, it's lie down. I say, you can't get out of bed, but you can still correct my grammar. She yells, yes, it matters. I say, then get out of bed. She doesn't. I look at her butchered hair. That's because a week ago, I took the household scissors and chopped off big chunks of it. I did it because it was a huge halo of wildness, so thick and silver sparkling. Now it was a huge halo of wildness that got caught in a buzzsaw. The Sunday afternoon, all the jazz you can eat radio show begins. We settle in to listen. Sinatra comes on. He's wailing blues in the night. Florence joins in. Ooh, woman, two faces, crying. Knowing something of her dating history, I asked her if that's true. She said, I didn't make that up. That's what's written. I start laughing. She asks why. Well, you're singing with heart. She shrugs. I'm just trying to get the words. And then she, who broke many hearts of many old girls and garnered many angry love letters and hurtful looks across crowded dances put on by the local gay and lesbian senior citizen center, she looks up and asks, well, is it true? A woman is two-faced? Now, whatever you call them, tits, titties, tatas, chest, breast, or as Florence calls them, bosom. The competition to grow them and buy your first training bra on Grand Street was fierce. Of course, all my friends got their bras first, regardless of how big they were, and none of them were big. But their parents were not only willing to train their daughters to get used to bondage, They were willing to splurge on something completely unnecessary. Finally, desperate to fit in, I ripped every single one of my undershirts down the middle and insisted to Florence my baby bosom had just busted out of heavy woven cotton. I actually said that. My bosom just busted through. You can't argue with desperate lying. Florence very reluctantly gave me $10, which was probably half our food budget, and sent me off to Grandin Orchard, where all the underwear stores run almost exclusively got Hasids and Orthodox Jewish families were located. No matter what store you walked into, the entire family was working, their mother, father, sister, brothers, cousins, grandparents, in-laws, everyone. Now, Wise Loungewear, one of the bigger stores, looked empty, so no risk running into anyone and embarrassing myself. Avoiding the men, I made a beeline straight for one of the grandmothers. I don't think I even said a training drop when suddenly, without warning, she planted both hands on everything that I had been able to grow in 12 years. And then just as quickly, she turned around, pulled out from the hundreds of identical white thin boxes that lined the entire wall, one specific box, a training bra approved. She didn't even have me try it on. Just packed it up, took Florence's $10, handed me a bunch of change. Heading home, I was a bit bewildered by touch I'd only experienced before from camp counselors and friends' uncles. But at least this time, I was carrying proof I was now a woman. A couple of years ago, in need of a bra, I returned to one of the last remaining family-run underwear stores on Grand and Orchard. Stepping into familiar walls stacked with hundreds of identical thin white boxes, I caught the young Hasid man at the counter giving me a side glance across my chest as I headed straight to the grandma. I don't think I even finished saying an underwire bra when without warning. Now, Florence is not only refusing to get out of bed, she is refusing visitors everything but her back. Kay, the recreational therapist, managed to get Florence to turn to her by playing a sonatina really badly on her electric keyboard. Annoyed by sloppy playing, Florence rolled over, corrected Kay's mistakes, and then rolled back into her little corner. Kay didn't give up. She began to mispronounce composers' names badly. Florence rolled back over and began a lesson on how Debussy is supposed to be pronounced. A couple of days later, finished with my swimming lesson, I looked down from the glass balcony at the gym's pool filled with bodies going back and forth and recalled a recent conversation with the ex-lover, the woman Florence had loved all her life, the woman who had loved Florence, her Deutsche, all her life. They had first found each other when they were so young they still had hope, but were old enough to recognize passion and desire from one another. Decades later, they were united, but only briefly, both too old to change in their ways or heal from a lifetime hiding from love. No one knew Florence like the ex-lover. Your mother, my Deutsche. Oh, was a great swimmer. Your mother, my Deutsche, could swim anywhere. Your mother, my Deutsche. We went to Coney. Oh boy, could your mother, my Deutsche, swim? She went out. She went way out. And then your mother, my Deutsche. Now, I knew Florence and Coney went back as far as Florence and the ex-lover. Years ago, before we knew that her memory had begun to fray, I got Florence to talk into a microphone about the place she loved more than her piano, Coney Island. Staring at the swimmers below, I thought, maybe I could coax Florence to roll back into life. I called her. Hello, Florence. Just finished swimming. Another swimming lesson. I used to go swimming. I swim, Florence said. I know, in the ocean. I had to shout this because she had again forgotten how to hold the phone to her ear. Right. Then you sit on the boardwalk, watch the people. They see you alone. They try to strike up a conversation. Get out of bed and I'll take you to Coney. Not Coney. Coney Island. It's Coney Island. Fine. Get out of bed. I'll take you to Coney Island. Okay, maybe tomorrow. Don't eat too much and go lie down. And with that, she clicked off into her own deep waters. I don't think I was the only one to take Florence to a dive bar. I know I was the only one that took her on her 60th birthday. We huddled at the bar, and I know we drank because I never knew Florence not to drink when there was something available to drink. I pulled out a pile of wrapped books and said, "Happy birthday." Each and every one of those books was about getting older in lesbian land, coming out, getting freed, living your life on your own terms. We looked through them and drank and looked some more and drank some more. And then I think she went off to meet friends. I was not invited. That's because she didn't tell her gal pals that she had kids. Boy, were they surprised at her memorial. It was the 1980s, and the world outside of the bars weren't safe for girls, especially gay girls. Sure, Florence fought and chased off more than a couple of muggers, but she also lived in a neighborhood that watched everything she did, suspected what she was, and judged what she wanted. But that bar was safe. That bar and all the bars like it gave shelter from the storm. In between teaching piano lessons in her living room, Florence would pull the books out from underneath the couch and look at the life she was finally calling her own. I don't know if she ever hung out at that bar again. Whatever she did or didn't do, that night, we both felt safe from the world and got to celebrate her birth, her day, and her life as who and what she was, and toast what she wanted for her new year. Food, flowers, and eating. Well, let me tell you, Irene, my fellow Lower East Side girl, and I touch base. Her mother had a fall, is doing okay for now, but Irene, on the other hand, is swamped with caretaking. The strategy I use on Florence, reassure and agree, is definitely helping her get through the day, except for the issue of food. I always offer to buy my mom food she would enjoy, Irene writes in her email. However, she refuses, insists on getting free food from the neighborhood senior citizen program, but she only marginally enjoys those meals. I mean, she would prefer to eat fish and beef prepared Cantonese style, but there's no way that would be free. At her age, she should be enjoying what she eats, but she won't take anything that isn't free. It's gotta be the aftermath of the Chinese-Japanese War when she was a child. Oh, the fear. There isn't enough money for food because of war, because of the Great Depression, because of poverty, because of there was only one thing to do when faced with an old person refusing to spend money on good food. Lie, I write Irene. Lie. I told Florence I was getting all this free food from the government because she was losing too much weight. So she started eating again. Lie. Tell your mom the Chinatown Alliance opened up a free food program for seniors. Oh, Claire, Irene writes back. You don't understand the power of Chinese networking. My mother just has to mention to one person how delicious the food was and direct that one person to Chinatown Alliance. And sooner than you can say Chinatown Alliance would have a line snaking around the corner. And then Chinatown Alliance would put out a wanted poster for the morally depraved Jewish chick who told a lie. Well, I've always wanted to be wanted. It's rumored to be made of horsehair, this bed she has slept in since 1977, bought with the only girlfriend she ever lived with and eventually dumped for the ex-lover in their wild reunion fling when they were both in their 60s. I think that there was even a story of this girlfriend and Florence giggling like mad when they brought this queen-size mattress into the building because all the neighbors were watching and knew something different was happening behind closed doors. Or maybe that was the Christmas tree story, another act of vandalism two middle-aged lesbians could do in a Jewish enclave. I have never laid down on this bed. I have stripped it, cleaned it, made it. I have sprayed it with Febreze. I've sat on it, held Florence's hand, and comforted her on this bed. I have dressed her, undressed her, clipped her nails on this bed, and every time, thinking she's back in the tenement on Hester Street, where sleepovers were common between friends, Florence would invite me to lie down, go to sleep on this bed, her bed. The bed she bought to begin a new life and hope and love. The bed she promised herself better futures and denied worse pasts. The bed no man ever slept in. The bed where she cradled herself through sleep, the radio playing all-night NPR news show. The bed she loved in, climaxed in, lost love in, splintered peace with frightening dreams in. refused to cry in, cried in. Her bed, filled with poems fiercely recited as reality shattered and disappointment flooded in. Tomorrow, the Medicaid electric hospital bed will arrive. Its hydraulic lift will make bed bathing Florence less backbreaking for Gabriella, the Medicaid home attendant. It will have bars to keep Florence from falling out in the middle of the night and buttons that push Florence up to sitting and down to sleeping. And when it is no longer needed, it will be returned to Medicaid. Tomorrow, Gabriella and I will somehow coax Florence from her old bed. I will lie, not on her bed, but to her face. I will say, we are putting you in a special bed just for a little while until you get better and can sit up without being dizzy. And when you do get better, and when you are walking again, you will go lay down in your own bed, and then we'll go to Coney. And she will correct me and say, Coney Island. And I will lie down, not lay down. And I will nod and know my lie is forever. So lovers leave, parents dies, apartments get cleared out. What are you going to do with your mother's stove? Are you going to sell it? Actually, it was more like, what you going to do with your mother's stove? You going to sell it? Little Mitzi was finishing off a day of collecting signatures in front of Moishe's bakery for what? I don't know. We were walking back to the building that she and Florence had lived in as neighbors for 50 years. Talking to little Mitzi, punctuation didn't exist, at least not in a conventional way. I used to visit your mother. We have the same stove a well bit. I lost some of the knobs. She said, here, take one of mine. I said, no, what are you going to do? No, keep your knobs. No, but what are you going to sell the apartment? Because they don't make the knobs anymore. I called, they didn't make them anymore. I love my well bit. I used to visit your mother. She was lonely, she told me. I promised to give her the knobs if we ever sold the apartment. When I asked to take her picture, she said, no, I'm a very private person, and flounced out of the elevator. Florence's birthday would have been 85. The ex-lover calls. This is the first year your mom, my Deutsche, isn't having a birthday on this earth, she said. Except for me, there is no one she can say that to, no one. All those children she had, all her grandchildren and great-grandchildren in that small New England town, she never told them a thing. So she calls me, the last place she has where almost 70 years of love is witnessed and honored. So I listen, as once again she describes the decades of speaking or not speaking and embraces and secrets and the sharing of a teenage diary filled with longing and marriages and divorces, and then decades after falling in love, the miracle of a reunion, a showering of silly gifts and bottles of wine, until the devastation of a breakup because neither were willing to change in their ways. Still, at the end, Florence clutched the little guitar chain that the ex-lover had given her, a talisman against the encroaching darkness. So, I wish you a blessed journey, safe travels. To everyone online, blessed journey, safe travels. Even though she had just pulled away from the curb, that bus driver opened the door for the once young, running fast as he could gentleman. The entire way uptown, she said hello to passengers, telling the woman with the cane to take her time and patiently answering the girl on her cell phone about what stop was best to get off at the hospital. And when the elderly man got caught smacked in the middle of the crosswalk at 3rd Street, just as the light changed, she called out to the crossing guard, let him cross, let him cross. And then she waited, because a light turning green or red was not as important as an elderly man caught in the middle of the street who couldn't walk faster than really slow, but needed to get to the other side. And because she waited, and because the bus driver told the crossing guard to let him cross, the crossing guard went out into the middle of the street, held up 5 lanes of traffic, and guided that old man safely to the corner. watching her, I remembered all the people who helped Florence as she stumbled through a city she once ruled, one that was suddenly beyond her disappearing capabilities. All the bus drivers, train conductors, fellow passengers, passerbys, deli guys, coffee shop owners. That night in the hospital when little Maria fed her, all our fellow New Yorkers, all our heart, soul, and city, all our love, all our New York. God is good, the bus driver told me as I got off the bus. So are you, I answered. Thank you so much.
Wow, I want you to keep reading. I really do.
For you, I'll read at dinner. So can everyone hear Paula and me for not speaking directly into the mic?
I was just thinking about how wonderful it is that this launch is taking place at the center. What's your, really, I mean, it's like homecoming.
Well, let me be in full disclosure. Florence was out before, I was, and then, I met some cute women and, it went downhill from there. And, Sage, this was a beat up old building. This is pretty. It was an old New York City school building. And for those of us who went to public school in New York City, it was beat up, but it was home. And there was this really cute social worker who happens to be here today. And I wanted to date her. And she was the social worker for senior action in a gay environment. So I got my mom involved with senior action in a gay environment. So I could date the social worker. It broke my heart. I'm not pointing yet.
It's interesting because I had a cute social worker who introduced us and who introduced me to your blog.
Yes, same cute
That's
social worker.
the same cute social worker, and the sage dances.
Yeah.
And I understand that your mom, notwithstanding the fact that she was a Juilliard graduate and a concert pianist, loved pop music.
So the American Songbook, the American song she loved, and she would tell, there were two guys that set up an electric keyboard and maybe a little drum set, and they would play the American Songbook while all the senior citizen in an action environment, like me dancing, and they were called garden parties, and everyone looked forward to it.
The Sage Garden parties.
Yes.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about Florence. I mean, a lot of us have stories, and the bookstores that used to be were filled with, and probably still are, of stories of us coming out to our parents. You had a parent coming out to you. Do you want to say a little bit?
She didn't come out to me.
No,
I've been living in the apartment.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking about the ex.
Oh, well, okay, I mean, we knew, right, we knew that there was a woman in Florence's life because there were these tiny little photo album, like the photo books, those little tiny pictures of this woman. And we knew her name, and we would ask Florence, who is, so-and-so. And I still can't say her name. Her family doesn't know,
She's still with us.
No, she's not. She died a couple of years ago. So we knew there was something else. The women that came to visit Florence, there was my favorite woman, Frankie, who was this wonderful butch artist with a dog. And I just thought she was awesome. Florence came from a community. There were stories of women who ran off with each other. But Florence, when the ex-lover told Florence they were getting married, so Florence had these mementos, and we knew that there was something in Florence's life. I mean, we just had a feeling. And when she started living with Mimi, who was out, everybody, I had neighbors call me from the Lower East Side and say, your mother looks wonderful. I don't know who the woman is that she's living with, but your mother looks wonderful. I don't know who. So, I was kind of like, I don't know. I just kind of like, okay, I didn't care,
Did it provide you with the right to have a broader choice?
Oh, please.
No?
No. No, I mean, I always knew what I was. Eclectic and, prepared for double the rejection. So no, clearly not. I wanted to date this cute social worker at Sage, nothing stopped me. I didn't have like big existential questions about it. I really hate to say that it was really for me a matter of what clothes I was going to wear at any given moment. No, do I wear this windbreaker or do I wear this skirt? I mean, that was really my concern. So I didn't really care. I think, I sort of knew because I grew up in New York City. I knew that I'd get shit for whatever I did from other people, but not from my family. My family gave a shit. And I wanted to say, I lived with Joni, who I think is online. I lived with Joni and, my parents loved her more than me. So did my cousins that I lived with, who were my guardians. Everyone loved Joni more than me, and I have proof. My father sent Joni a birthday card every year. Did not send me. No, there are multiple stories of, that circumstance.
I want to ask you a little bit about the book because it's so, the book as a memoir, it's such a kaleidoscope of photographs and little tidbits of writing about, as you passed a store in your neighborhood. How did you get the idea? Because it's not a traditional, certainly not a traditional memoir. It's so dense.
Dense as in a good way?
Dense as in a good way.
Not that I'm, hoping for a little couple more compliments here. I don't know. I grew up with a learning disability that has never quite been, trained. So I did a lot of compensation, but one of the things that really helped me was pictures. So, Florence would take us to the Seward Park Library and she would dump me in front of the Charles Adams books and I would look at pictures and, a little bit of language. I was just really good at combining the two so I could understand what I was reading because I really had a hard time reading. I just understood pictures. And I also grew up with Family of Man, and there were like big coffee coffee table books with images in it, the circus or of dogs. So I was, the way that I understood the world were through pictures. But we weren't rich. And it wasn't like there were cameras, there was a Brownie camera, and I think there are 4 pictures of me in my entire childhood. I mean, that wasn't part of our culture. So I don't quite understand how I began to combine pictures and language, but I think it was how I began to understand the world around me. And I went to film school because I needed to waste more money. And I was videotaping Florence a lot. And then she literally overnight got sick and I literally couldn't hold a camera. And I didn't want to hold a camera. I didn't want to document an old person's sickness. I'd seen those documentaries. They're great. They're important. Dutiful Daughter is an incredible documentary. I just didn't want to do it. But I could hold a small point and shoot. And I want to just say that the cute social worker who broke my heart, not that I'm bitter, 40 years bitter. She's a professional photographer and she sent me a point and shoot. And I was able to like have this camera and it's really easy to flip it out and take a picture and put it back in your pocket and then go on to the next thing. And so I was doing that because I was taking pictures of Florence, but stories were happening right in front of me. Florence was saying, I mean, you know, it's lie down, not lay down. You better believe I wrote that down. I mean, that's, you know, that's hysterically funny that no matter, she's dying and yet she's still correcting me, you know, so it just became this moment. I think it became a moment of expression that helped me survive. You know, that I needed to keep my work and my writing and my sense of story. I needed to feel like I was me other than the daughter who was doing nonstop caretaking and casework. And that was, I was lucky. I think about this a lot. I didn't have children. So when I came home exhausted at the end of the day, all I had was me, you know, and some really good Chinese takeout noodles. And I could sit down and, you know, blast together a photo and a story because that's how I worked. That's how my brain worked, or that's how I interpreted the world. You know, and I think artists of any kind, of any genre, we interpret the world through whatever medium is our normal, natural, like our birthright language. Like, I think my normal language is to be silent or to be silenced, you know, because I grew up in a neighborhood where shut up girlie was a pretty common, you know, thing I heard. But the birthright that I was born with just saw the world in pictures and story. And I think also I was raised on musicals, you know, so big pictures and lots of words and singing, you know.
How did this book start?
It started because I was walking home it started as a blog. I thought I started in 2006, man. I just looked at the blog. I started in 2008. I don't know how that happened. But you know, senior moments are my life. So I was walking up Avenue A, and this is when the neighborhood was becoming more and more safe, you know, and I was walking up Avenue A and I saw this kid in a pork pie hat in front of Ray's talking about egg creams into a camera. And he was saying, "What's an egg cream? Is there an egg in it?" And I thought, I'm gonna punch that kid. And so because I didn't want an assault charge, I went home and used my words, you know, but I wrote this tiny little thing about, you know, basically, fuck you. An egg cream is an egg cream. Get the fuck out if you're not going to find out, you know. Well, it's much more polite. And then, you know, it just kind of like, well, and then another story. So I worked at a drug rehab agency and I saw a man go from urine box to urine box because there's constant testing of urine and blood in drug rehab agencies. And he was putting them into these shopping bags and he was walking away. I thought, you know, that's a great story, but where's the picture? So I just began to do pictures on this blog, and I did it for 10 years, but it's actually 8 years because I still can't do math. And I just 3 times a week, story, memory, story, memory, story, memory. Not a lot of readers, but for me, a wonderful way to really document what I saw my city unfold before my eyes. And some of the shit was just really fucking funny to me. Other people tell me it's a little upsetting. So,
Yeah, well, I started reading your blog. And I'm sure as I look around and in the group that's here today, you know, some of us are starting to have the responsibility of caring for elderly parents, and that's why that was the referral. That was what I was doing, and I cared for my mom. I'm not an only child. I have a sibling, but she was in another part of the country, and our lovely caseworker friend, our lovely social worker friend said, you know, you might be interested in reading Claire's blog. And I've known you since you were
a youngster.
25 or 3, something like that. And
Lesbian.
yes, and I knew how brilliant you are. And the involvement with WOW. I mean, I went to the first conference that WOW had before it became a theater group. I think it was a gathering first, and on the Lower East Side. And as I was caring for my mom, and I went back to the beginning. I went back to the beginning of your blog and started reading that. And I started putting your, it's okay. It's that bad, huh? I started sharing your stories on Facebook or whatever social media that I could, and telling people, this is brilliant stuff. You have to get into it, and you have to read it. And I just want to say that it was a salve for maybe, it's my own personality. And, but I was a director of the agency that I worked in, and I really didn't feel that I could speak with people there. That wasn't my function, to get their support. But it was so much support for me to see what you had gone through, what you were going through. My mom it wasn't the same. But I remember you wrote one of the stories, you wrote something about that the interruption, you talked about you were writing, you were working on a film, and all of a sudden, this responsibility came down on you. Did you have a sister?
I had a great, I'm very lucky. I had a sister who was there.
Brilliant.
She definitely shared a lot of, the caretaking with me, and we had different functions. She had children and a full-time job. I had no children and a 30-hour job. So there was a lot. I lived near Florence. I could walk there in 20 minutes. I could get a cab in 5. I could get there and get an ambulance. I was the emergency person.
We talk about caring for our family, and was this a way of caring for yourself?
It had to be. I mean, look, I just did it. And I think, like, for the 8 years, I just did it. And it's only when I had to write an article, there's a website called Women's Books. I was asked to write an article about the origins of how I came to do this. And that's where I really saw that doing the blog for all those years was saving my life. Because every time I had to write something, I was reconnecting to that mother tongue, that birthright of how I wanted to see and express in the world. Now, I was a lot of different things in my life. I was a domestic housekeeper, babysitter. I was a clerk. I was a clerical, assistant. I was a receptionist, and I was a secretary and a coordinator. And then I became, I got this fancy job freelancing at the UN. I had all these titles. But the only time, and it's true to this day, that I feel like who I am is when I'm pushing a story onto a page or there's a picture, or both. And so it really was something deeper and smarter inside me that made sure I was doing that, because really I'm not that bright.
Does I also, anybody, we're having this kind of conversation here, but if anybody has a question or a comment or that they'd like to just, raise your hand, and we'll.
Well, okay, let's just start with how many native New Yorkers are here?
Okay.
Holy shit.
What makes you a native New Yorker?
Yeah, that's
Born
Okay, anybody else,
I was born here and
yeah.
I said that because I don't want to exclude, because I think that sometimes people find their home, I mean,
You find that home.
you find your home. And you know that you wanted to get here. I mean, it's a fact, the things that you're writing about parts of New York, it's not that things have to stay the same.
No, not at all, and they can't. And I remember talking to Jeremiah Moss at Vanishing New York saying, it is great that the streets are safer. It just would have been lovely if they were safer for all of us instead of, the influx of gentrification and luxury buildings. It should be for all of us. And I don't believe you gotta be born here to be a native New Yorker. Because I know New Yorkers, there are a couple here, married to one. I have a beloved friend in the front row who's another. I mean, there are beloved New Yorkers here. They are here. And I have New Yorkers online right now who, left for Washington State, So, and skis. Anyway, so I think that there's a lot of ways to know that you're home. And I think like New York is a place, New York is a port, it's a harbor. Before the airplanes, it was a harbor. And so it was a place where you could come home to. And so how you define home, and that's a big theme for me, again, didn't know that, found out by writing, that seeking home and feeling home is, what we travel for. And many of us were unlucky because their parents moved someplace else or grew up someplace else and they had to find their way home. And this New York is their home. So, of course, they're New Yorkers. Native New Yorkers, I think that there are a couple of things that we have differently. We have different sounds in our ear. I grew up with a train across the street. The subway was running every 2 minutes, or hearing glass breaking was very normal. Hearing, there are different sounds that I grew up with that were normal sounds. You put me in a forest, which to me is anything where there are more than 3 trees. I'm a little uncomfortable.
It's like, I have this feeling about city dark, country dark.
Oh, big difference.
Country dark is dark.
Psychos. Gonna get killed. Agatha Christie, every Agatha Christie, they're in some country road and they're dead.
And where did they come?
They come from the trees.
City. Exactly.
Don't trust the trees.
I was born in Manhattan and grew up in
the Bronx.
Grew up in the Bronx.
Yeah.
And that's where my childhood was. And I'm a little bit older than you. And I remember the sound, you remember the sounds of the trains. I wasn't near the L, for those who, the elevated line in the Bronx. But I remember my Bronx had a guy with a horse who brought groceries around, And I had, and I remember of people in my building, in the Morrisania section of the Bronx who had ice boxes, and the guy brought ice up on his shoulder with and I remember the seltzer man.
The seltzer man. I remember the seltzer man. He pulled, oh yes, there's a hand in the back. So please.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting. Thank you so much for your book. I am not a native New Yorker, but I'm grateful to be in New York.
You're a New Yorker. I bless you.
Yeah.
The sort of sound of the Bahamas and settled here and definitely feel like this is my home.
Yeah.
What can folks do that are not native New Yorkers when they're going into spaces to take care of the New York that you know?
What a great question.
To preserve that and keep that moving.
The fact that you asked it means you're doing it. I really want to say that. The fact that you asked it means you're doing it, that you acknowledge that we're here welcoming into a city that literally is in our DNA. where there's a lack of that is when, you know, someone's got their head up their ass, they watch a lot of Martin's, excuse me, sorry. I am trying so hard and I am failing, so that's an immediate thing. If you really want to like connect to New Yorkers, just curse. I learned a really great one, sperm burping gutter slut from the guys downstairs at it's like, oh, this is so awesome. But you know, where I really run into like feeling like alienated in my own home is when I meet people who have watched a lot of Martin Scorsese movies and start copping attitude. And it's that attitude of like, that's obliterating to, you're coming into someone's home, be curious. And I think if that might be the word, be curious. You know, be curious about how it's different. Don't mansplain me about how to walk down the street or how to cross against the light. I've never crossed with the light. You know, that kind of thing. Be curious, be respectful, be curious. And I think that isn't just about New York. That's about everything. Be curious and respectful. Ask me a question or just listen to me talk. Obviously, I still stop talking. That's a wonderful question. Thank you. Welcome to New York. It's your home. Please, I know, look, I know some of you are so nosy. So ask away. Yeah, please.
We're speaking about your mother and how she, knew other queer women. I was wondering, when did she come out and meet like-minded women, and where in that time, what spaces was she meeting other women?
That's a great question. She met Mimi, the woman she actually lived with, who used to call me up and scream that Florence was sleeping with her ex-girlfriend. Anyway, she met her through music friends, that her music crowd was very eclectic and there were lots of old girls there. And there was actually a wonderful lesbian organization called Classical Music Lovers, where they all performed for one another. So she was part of a music crowd. But I think she turned 60 and I was like 23. And I think that when I introduced her to Sage, that's when she began to really come out. So we have a picture of her in the book marching at 58 years of age in her first Pride. Yeah, and it was really, I mean, it was just awesome. And the thing that I loved about Florence was that when she really stepped into herself, it was like a fish in water. It was just, that's where she was, no explanation. It's just how she did it. It would have been nice if she told people she had a daughter, but I'm not. You know, we ran into problems because she would run into some of the girls who she was very hot. And had a lot of women with crushes and some borderline stalking. And they would run into her. If I was with her, they would glare at me because they thought I was this young thing trying to date, you know, their hot girlfriend. You know, I found it funny, you know. Other people said other things like maybe that's a little psychotic, but besides, but thank you for that question. She stayed out, you know, she was what she was. You know, she was a musician, she loved girls, she loved the American Songbook. She loved her city, she loved junk food. She loved fast food, and that, like, she thought, yeah, Wendy's.
Those stories in the book about her going up, you know, down Second Avenue, hitting every junk food place that
place.
you could find. No.
Yes, good job, Wendy.
You had so many stories with so many people. And at a certain point, you had to go through and ask people if it was okay if you were.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you got surprised. I don't know the answer to the question. What if you were surprised by anybody that said yes or by anybody that said no?
That's a great question. Thank you. I was surprised when certain relatives said I could use their images. That surprised me because my relatives surprised me. The only person that I really felt concerned about is a woman whose picture I took and whose story I told, and she signed a release. But I found out by visiting her Facebook page that she might not be particularly friendly to us. And I have delayed sending her a book. I mean, I have legal paperwork that says she said yes, and she had the story. She approved the story that I wrote about her, which is a great story. It's a Lower East Side story. You can't make this up. But that is the only person that I think I might receive some difficulty from. Everybody else surprised the hell out of me by being generous. By, by meeting me, by signing the release of their image, very grateful for that. And by being willing to trust me with their story. And I double checked, Irene is written about several times, and because we keep connecting over the issue of parenting and also being Lower East Side girls, she was very generous with her story. And there are a couple other people in the book who are very generous with the story. So, yeah, for the most part, it was okay. I didn't have to cut anything yet. Other questions? I know that there are writers in this room, and it really, yes, Madeline.
Well, one comment, people in the story, are they all deceased?
One would hope so. No, some of them are quite alive and in touch with me. Some have died. We definitely tried to reach one of the story contributors, Hyman, and he died. The ex-lover's dead, but I never identified her, and I obscured every photo that I had of her, so you don't really quite see her face. Everybody else seems to be alive and kicking. Oh, so far it's been really lovely. No one has sent hate mail. Well, there was one email, but we're looking at it as the person was attempting to be nice.
Not failing.
I took that email and I handed it to Ted and I said, oh, what is this? And he goes, well, she's trying to be nice. So I'm gonna take it at that. But the response has been very loving because the stories are loving. Look, it was a bitch and a half to take care of two old parents. And two old parents who weren't great parents. I mean, let's get real. But that's not the story. The story began when I suddenly had to take care of someone who became like a child, and a really interesting teenager. That's where the story began. I do not need to talk about my childhood. It sucked, but it was also magnificent. I say a lot about Florence that she sucked as a mother, but she was brilliant as a role model of how to be an artist. And one of the things that I hear from women writers particularly is that they didn't have that role model, that there's always this undertow where they just don't feel like they're entitled. And I never felt that because Florence modeled to me how you sit down every day and you do your work. And that work comes first. And that's the greatest gift. So she sucked as a mother, big fucking deal. I don't know. Yes.
My question goes sort of parallel to that. So maybe in your blog you noticed it or the transition from like growing into an adult. Did you call her mother? Did you call her mom?
What? I am so glad you asked that.
And when did you shift
Oh.
into, or if you ever did, I mean, an 8-year-old calling your mother Florence?
Okay, so let me tell you how that came about. The question for the people online, if you didn't hear that, is when was the shift from mom or mommy or mother to Florence? I think I was 11 or 12 on Mother's Day when Florence said, stop calling me mother. My name is Florence. We said, okay. And we called her Florence. I would occasionally call her mom, occasionally. The night that she died, we called her mom, but we also called her Florence. But we basically called her Florence. Yeah.
And in your writing, you always
always referred to her as Florence, although a couple times I would write mom, you know, I mean, but Rose, I mean, what she said to us that day was, I'm a person. And it's something that I really, you know, want mothers here. There are several people who are mothers here, and also people who have mothers. We all have something between mother or gave birth to us or raised us. I had a couple of people who raised me. I think that when we are given that word mom, it's a little bit obliterating because all of a sudden we're a Hallmark card. And I think Florence needed to be a person, and we got that. And I'm grateful. You know, I had a coworker recently from a different country who kept calling me Miss Claire. Now, that's fine when I want respect, but there was something about it that really bugged me because it felt like he was making me a thing. And I said, I need you to stop doing that. He said, well, can I call you grandmother? So I really watched the language of monikers that women are often stuck with, you know, so that obliterate our full humanness. It's great to be a mom, you know, I'm not, but I know I see great mothering out there and it's like, that's awesome. And they are thrilled to be mothers. Yay. You know, say that word while you also recognize there's a woman there or there's a parent there. Thank you for that. That's a great question. Hi.
I'm just wondering, in writing about the city so much and writing about home, like, if in that process, like, how do you think about the city? How do you think of like your place in the city? What home means? It's changed things.
Of course you would ask me a question. No, it's a great question. This is one of a brilliant writer. This is Rebecca Marks. So, what I hear you ask is how I identify or re-identify home in my writing. I think by writing this and by looking at the city with the photographs that I still take, that I still see home, so I anchor myself and I don't feel like I'm living in a strange city that I didn't grow up in. So I am actually looking for little moments, either in conversation or in photo, where I'm home. And I think like that's an amazing feeling for a lot of us. Like, where do we feel home? And when do we feel home? You know, they say home is where the heart is. You know, it's like, well, that's true. When I'm with my, you know, spouse, you know, and we're not trying to kill each other, which doesn't happen a lot, I'm home. We can be at Trader Joe's and I'm home because we make a home together. I'm very lucky. I waited until I was 53 to meet someone like that. And I waited until 57 to get married for the first time. You know, I waited. I also got rejected entirely all to that point. So it's not like I was really, you know, saying no. So that was a feeling of home, you know, in my city when I'm walking around, when I need, yeah, I hear a language or I hear a comment. New Yorkers talk to each other. God, we don't shut up. You know, you got two New Yorkers at a bus stop, off and running. You know? And you know, one of the questions is going to be, what high school did you go to? Because that's the litmus test. What high school did you go to? Yeah. So yeah, it's these little tiny moments that remind me I'm okay. And the rest of the time, I got blinders on. You know, I don't need another coffee shop. Well, actually, I do, but I don't need another yogurt shop. So that was a great question. Thank you so much. So anyone else, please? Yeah.
Well,
Thank you so much.
I'm curious, as a writer, if you can share your experience, your method in terms of actually looking at Florence / your mother, and how you saw her as a artist, as a lesbian, as a mom, as a lover, just how you reconcile all of them. Wow.
The question is how, with all the many facets of Florence, you know, artist, parent, lesbian, how I amalgamated her into, I have to say, she did it for me. She was so interesting, even as her brain was going out the window. She was so interesting. She was interesting before and she was interesting during. her last night of life on earth, she was interesting. You know, she was still her. You know, and I'm not gonna get into the details, but she told me who she was by how she said what she said. And man, I was just taking dictation. You know, and when I look at how I then took the dictation and told the bigger story, I don't know who wrote it. I mean, I'm really grateful that whatever's inside me, you know, and I did this and the words came out. But it really was like observing this really interesting person who didn't question at that point in her life who she was. You know, and that we should, you know, I think especially women, I question everything. Isn't that amazing? She just was like, she was gonna go dance with girls. She never wore a dress again. You know, which was great. I got all her dresses. Anybody else? Yes.
Oh, no, sorry. Actually, no, I do have a question. With writing, how do you like, how do I put this? Not want to go crazy and two, like constantly stop out of like insecurity, I guess, because as women, you know, we're made, I think, always to feel, societally speaking, like less than. I was in art school, and you know, we always traditional like male artists, male writers, male work. And I feel like the women, we had to work twice as hard compared to our male classmates. So how do you just like sit down and like get it done and be like, fuck it?
Oh,
You know?
that's,
Sorry, that was
no,
really
no,
rude.
that is so, I'm so glad you asked that. Yeah, we gotta live twice as heavy weight. Yeah, that's what we gotta do. So how I did it was I made sure that I had an infrastructure and an external discipline that kept me from giving up. And I want to just say, male writers also experience this. I live with a writer, you know, I mean, the two of us are, there's some moments on the couch where the two of us are like, you know, dead and just like, why the fuck did I, you know, I keep saying next life I'm gonna be a dental hygienist. Because I think they do great work and then they go home at the end of the day. One is find a way to remind yourself, no matter how you feel, that you get to write. Feelings aren't facts. I cannot say that a billion times. Feelings are not facts. I sat on my little love seat with index cards thinking, why the fuck am I doing this? This is pointless. The despair, the depression, the futility that I had, months of this as I put together this book, were never ending. Feelings aren't facts. So I had a discipline. I just had a habit that every day I was going to sit down, I was going to look at another index card and I was going to move them around. And then I was going to sit there, no matter how I felt, I still acted. The second thing that I had, which I cannot stress enough, is I have a very robust and vigorous spiritual practice. I practice Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism. I do not practice it every day, but I damn as well drag myself to practice it every day. I practice a spiritual practice that reminds me every day that I am here to create value in the world with my work. And that is the only way I got through the despair at times, because I would sit there completely defeated and start chanting. For those of you who don't know Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism, my shortcut is, it's the Buddhism Tina Turner. The Tina Turner Buddhism, that's what I do. I've been doing it for 25 years, and every day there's a new challenge, and every day I have to go deeper. So I had a discipline. I had two disciplines. The feelings aren't facts. I'm going to keep chanting. I also made sure, and this is just me, I work out. I go to the gym, I walk nonstop, I do something physical with my body, because my neuro pathways are, you know, crazed. And so my body, as gets healthier and healthier, my brain has a chance. I have a chance. The stress that it takes to write, and I know there are a couple of amazing writers here, Melissa Giffordson, who wrote Late Bloomer, a fucking fantastic book about coming out later in life. She ain't that old. Yeah, you know, is that we have so much stress in putting down what it is we're supposed to say out loud.
Mm.
And that's how you say fuck it. And also you'll meet amazing men, because I don't want this to be about men and women. Yeah. Because the couple that's like, excuse me, Prince McNally over there going snappy, snappy, you know, is a fierce writer. And because of that, he is ferocious in supporting me. So that's the fourth thing, I don't know, I don't count. Support other writers. Don't expect them to support you back, but find the writers who can't wait to support you. Yeah. Let's put it there. I have an amazing writing crew here today. We are fierce to one another. Watch out for the writers who want to kill your work, undermine you, compete with you, fuck them. That's who you say fuck them to. Yeah, Madeline.
May I posit one more of your
Yeah.
structures? The open mics.
Oh, the open mics.
And we have heard pieces and, you know, of these all along, and we were all blown away. And I also feel, I don't know your experience, but at open mics, I don't feel there's men, women, someone, you know, one gender has to try harder. It is everyone who speaks, no matter what age, who they are, gender. You speak you from the heart, and you are so.
Yeah, well, sometimes, Matt. No, let's get real. No, I've been to some open mics where those people want to kill you. Yeah. I thank you so much. Open mics. There are a bunch of open mics. Get up there and do 3 minutes. Get up there and start saying out loud. Do not expect, Madeline had a great, Madeline's brilliant, so you know, hello. But I've been to open mics where I know the audience, you know, does not give a shit about me. And I looked at as an opportunity to really work my craft and to get up there anyway, to say out loud in a mic, 3 minutes. And it's over. And then you go get a martini. You know? So yeah, open mics. Thank you. That's a great suggestion. Yeah.
I'm just gonna throw a comment in here. You talked a little bit about what you have to do to deal with your own insecurities. But the other thing that I have witnessed
Oh dear.
is you get in a rage when anyone else tries to tell you no. Because I think important. for
Yeah.
everybody who's trying to run.
Get angry. Get angry.
Nobody has the right to say.
Nobody has the right to tell you your work, you know, doesn't deserve to be there. Yeah. I just want to give a call out to Amy Ferris, who like 25 years ago, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of people who love Amy Ferris. Amy Ferris, you know, posts a lot on Facebook. I met her 25 years ago and I showed her some writing and she said, oh, you have to publish this. And because she said that one sentence, I didn't stop writing. I never published it, but I didn't stop writing. And so every single time something good happens to me, I write to her and say, it's your fault. Support one another, you know, demand respect and give it. And be, you know, like I have a great writing community because I had amazing role models, Phil Griambri and Linda Kleinbug and Pauline Finley are here, you know, Prince. I have an amazing community that is fierce about my work and I'm fierce about their work. That's what you seek it. And you're young, so you have time. Please don't take as long as I did. Any other questions? Please, this is your last, yes.
Can you talk about the publication of your book?
Yeah,
And do you feel like there's more of an appetite for books that center on queer women?
There should be. I don't, you know, I mean, I don't know because we're in a landscape of celebrity, you know, tell-alls, which I like. Sadly, I do like. I would think that lesbians are always kind of like a hot topic. Like the reason why I kept making sure that old lesbians was on all my publicity is because I knew people were, oh, old lesbians, man, I want to read about that. They thought they were gonna get some old girl on girl action and boy, were they surprised. So I would think, yes, I think especially the younger generation, you know, I'm 65, you're, no,
79.
no, you're not.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, well, this is what it looks like.
BBC.
Yeah. I think the younger generation has changed the landscape of choice and expression and love and identity. So I think, yeah, there is a bigger landscape for it. Yeah, bring it on. And you know what? If there isn't, fuck them. Bring it on anyway. Expand the world. Expand it.
Our stories.
Our stories are important. Lesbian History Archives, if there are some people there, and you know who I'm talking to, who have not been to the Lesbian History Archives, please go. It is where all of our stories, my papers are there, my mother's papers are there. I'm queer. I'm married to a guy. I'm queer. That's what I am. Go there and we're there. They're amazing, amazing proof of incredible women from all over in that archives in Brooklyn. It is a bit of a bitch to get there. I don't like the train. Yes.
Can you talk about the arc of your relationship with your mother, like how you were able to do this book now versus maybe 10 years ago or 20 years ago?
Well, 20 years ago, forget about it. 10 years ago, I think I was taking care of my father. So there was that. Is it because she's dead that I could write the book? Is that what you're asking?
It's such a profound love story, and I don't know if that was always the feeling.
No, it wasn't always the feeling. This is an old friend. She's known me for 35 years, 30 years, 35 years. Okay. No, it was, again, she was a difficult ass, mother, but she was a fascinating woman. And so the story begins when I had to suddenly take care of her. And that's when I had to really work on my shit. And I had to work out all my painful little mommy shit, which was fine, because the more I healed my rage and she was really frustrating at times, the more I healed that experience and the more I just kind of loved and took care of her, the greater the story. And she was like that. So, I want to just say at the Wow Cafe, I had a play produced called How to Say Cottage with Your Mouth Shut, which is the prayer for the dead in the Jewish tradition. And it's about my mother, my sister, and me in an emergency room waiting to find out who's dead because we've been cursing at each other for so long. Florence went to see that multiple times, laughed through it every time because it was a very funny play. I asked her about that, at some point, because people were kind of curious. Your mother keeps coming to the show and she seems to enjoy it and she's not upset. And it's like, so I said, well, how do you feel? She goes, well, okay, it's a little bit like hearing my diary read out loud. But the reality is, the minute you tell a story and you put it out into the world, it becomes the world's. It is no longer your story. It's a story. The reviews that I've been getting and the interpretation of the books tell me this is not my story anymore. This book is not mine. This isn't my story. This isn't Florence's story. It is, but now it's everybody else's, and their interpretation is extraordinary. And that's the arc. It's like I had to work my Buddhist practice like I'd never worked it before when I was taking care of my mother. And because of that, at the end of her life, I was in deep peace and in deep love for her and in deep respect for her. And I wish that for anybody and everybody who have family members, wherever they are and however you're caring for them, even if they are dead, to heal that so that you can be looking at that person and say, wait, you sucked at that, but boy, you're awesome at this. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for the gifts. So thank you for the question. Yes, V. Hello, V.
What would your mom say to you right now?
There are people here who know her. So I'm gonna just, and correct me if I'm wrong. When the play was on at WOW, someone went up to her in front of me and said, "You must be so proud of the play." She goes, "Oh, her, but you were fantastic." So I would assume she would poo-poo it, and then actually she was a great editor. She probably edited. I think she'd be a little uncomfortable, but I think that I hope that she would delight in being seen. because that is something that we all need, and certainly something she never really received in her life. You know, to be seen as who she really, really was. So that is an extraordinary question. I don't know, but if the people here who do know Florence and you know who you are, what, if you think that she might have said something else, let it rip, because I have no idea. I would just hope that she would be happy. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for coming. I just want to, before we say goodbye, thank you so much for coming out. I cannot tell you. Well, Meredith Monk once told Joni, when Joni said, I have no words, she said, try. So for a writer to say, I have no words is saying that gratitude cannot be articulated. And that is a challenge for me right now, because I don't know if I have enough words for the gratitude of everyone coming out today and celebrating this book about a woman who just wanted to dance with other women and be loved. And a city that is just so much our home. So I really have gratitude. I just also need to thank Rootstock Publishing and Samantha Colber, the publisher, and Sienna Long is actually on watching today. She designed the cover. She had a really beautiful cover. She's so talented. Eddie Vincent did the layout of the book. It was such a hard book to put together. And Lou O'Brien is here, who, you know, has really publicized the book. I mean, this book needs a life and it needs to be out in the world, and she has busted her chops to make that happen. And we have contributors, you know, there are people here who contributed to the book. I'm so grateful for that. I want to particularly point to Morgan Gwenwald, the photographer, who did a beautiful picture of Florence at this, you know, in front of the Sage Banner and gave me a camera. And the Lesbian History Archives and Paula Grant, you know, who, another phone. If you haven't been to the archives, you no longer have an excuse. She'll give you the directions. It's always a bit of a bitch, but so what? But I also need to thank the elders, and there are two elders here. Phil Giambri. Thank you. Because he got me back in front of a mic after years of being unable to speak in public. And also Peggy Shaw of the Wellsville Family. When I decided to put down the violin, I showed up at WOW and it was an acting class. And Peggy and I got on stage together and did a boxing match. Improvised a boxing match. And when I got off, she said, "You're going to do fine. You're a fool." So thank you to the bookstore, Greg and Donnie. You know, this has just been an extraordinary hosting. We so appreciate it. They gave this space. It's free, you know, come on in. We'll streaming. We got a projector. It's really such a wonderful place to have a book. I feel proud to have my book here. And the last person I want to thank, I know it sounds really strange, you know, for a queer woman who ended up married to a man, saying this at the lesbian trans community center where my life was as a young woman safe here. I want to thank my husband, Dad. Because I am not fun to be with when I'm having a bad day. And he has been amazing, a voice of reason and a voice of calm as I threw the computer repeatedly against the walls. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody.